Question 3, how have podcasts affected social activism? I found 2 sources, one from, Mashable.com. It talks about 8 activist podcasts that you need to listen to. And so I feel like just the fact that there is a website that outlines activist podcasts that you should listen to is something that's monumental. It talks about things like Edge of Sports, things about one called Another Shot, things called Intersection that talks about where all the ways we can identify and come together. There's one that's called Back Talk that comes from a feminist perspective. TWIB stands for, Team Blackness is what it says. So, there's just a lot of things that people can talk about. People can bring awareness to issues. People like to listen to podcasts in their car. It provides a different way to listen to the radio, in a sense, just because you can listen to it. You don't have to conversate with it. You don't have to do a whole lot. You just listen, and you get to get more information and more knowledge about it. The other source from theconversation.com talks about truth to power, how podcasts are getting political. A specific part where the writer talks about, she says, like radio, podcasts are an intimate medium that can powerfully convey emotion. Radio still attracts way more listeners. The latest data shows over 90% of Americans over 12 have listened to radio in the last week, compared to only 40% who have ever listened to a podcast. Pioneering data from the respected Edison Research shows only about 30% of Australians have ever listened to, while a meager 17% in the last month have listened to a podcast. In both countries, podcast listeners tend to be more educated and affluent than average. I think, especially when we talk about political issues, podcasts are something that are always brought up, like NPR. I feel like is a popular podcast, but it's also on a radio. But you know what I mean. It's just a way to talk about things, to conversate about things, for people to listen about conversation and just gain a new perspective without having to fight or to battle or to argue about it. Because I feel like that's what a lot of activism is today, is just defending your opinions. And so when you listen to a podcast, you can listen to a different opinion without having to defend yourself, without feeling attacked or having to convey a message in a certain way. Podcasts are just a way to listen and for activism to gain momentum, just so that people who of like-mindedness can join the same movement and be active as well.